Tonight, before you go to sleep, you'll probably check the time one last time. Maybe on your phone, maybe on your smartwatch, maybe on the tiny clock glowing beside your bed. You won't even think about it, because knowing the exact time feels normal. But for more than 99% of human history, that simple act was impossible. There were no clocks, no watches, no alarms, not even numbers for hours. And yet, people still woke up together. Farmers knew when to plant. Hunters knew when to leave. Entire cities somehow coordinated their lives. So here's the question that almost nobody stops to ask. How did billions of people know what time it was before time even existed? The answer isn't just surprising, it completely changes the way you'll think about time itself, because the first humans didn't lose track of time. They experienced it in a completely different way. Imagine waking up 30,000 years ago. There's no buzzing alarm, no morning notification, no calendar reminding you it's Monday. You open your eyes because something else woke you. A faint orange glow is spreading across the horizon. The air feels colder than it did before you fell asleep. Birds have started singing. Somewhere nearby, someone is already adding wood to a dying fire. Without saying a single word, everyone knows the day has begun. Not because they checked a clock, because nature told them. Here's what almost everyone gets wrong. Ancient humans weren't trying to measure time, they were trying to survive, and survival doesn't care whether it's 7:13 in the morning. It only cares whether the sun is high enough to hunt, whether the tide is coming in, whether darkness is close enough to make predators dangerous. For thousands upon thousands of years, time wasn't something you counted. It was something you felt. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies noticed something fascinating. Groups like the Hadza of Tanzania rarely organize life by exact hours. Instead, they think in events, after sunrise, before the heat becomes unbearable, when the shadows grow long, after everyone has eaten. Life flows from one moment to another, almost like chapters in a story instead of numbers on a clock. And strangely, that may have been how almost every human who ever lived experienced the world. But then, scientists discovered something even stranger. Our bodies have been carrying a clock all along, not in our hands, inside our brains. In the early 1970s, researchers identified a tiny cluster of about 20,000 nerve cells buried deep inside the brain. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, tiny enough to fit on the tip of your finger, yet it quietly controls one of the most important rhythms in your life. It tells you when to feel sleepy, when to wake up, when your body temperature rises, even when certain hormones should flood your bloodstream. What's incredible is that this biological clock keeps ticking, even if you never see another clock again. In fact, researchers performed a remarkable experiment. Volunteers lived alone inside underground caves for weeks. No windows, no sunlight, no watches, no phones, nothing that could reveal the time. Many believed they'd completely lose their sense of day and night, but they didn't. Their bodies continued following a daily rhythm almost perfectly. Not because they knew the time, but because their brains did. Which raises a strange question. If humans already had an internal clock, why invent external ones at all? The answer begins with a problem our ancestors couldn't solve. Imagine you're leading a hunting group. The plan is simple. Half the hunters wait near the river, the rest hide behind the trees. But there's one problem. How do you tell everyone exactly when to move? Later isn't precise enough. When the sun is high might already be too late. One small mistake and dinner escapes. Suddenly, time isn't just about survival, it's about coordination. And that's where everything starts to change. Long before clocks existed, people began searching for patterns. Reliable patterns. The sun always rose in the east. Shadows stretched and shrank in predictable ways. The moon slowly changed its shape night after night. The stars marched across the sky with astonishing consistency. Nature was quietly keeping time. For anyone patient enough to notice, generation after generation, people memorized these patterns until they became second nature. Children learned them from their parents. Parents learned them from their grandparents. No written manuals, no instruction books. Just thousands of years of careful observation. Then one civilization noticed something that would change history forever. They realized shadows weren't just signs, they were measurable. And once humans learned they could measure a shadow, they unknowingly took the very first step toward measuring time itself. But here's the twist. The first clock humanity built couldn't work at night, couldn't work on cloudy days, and sometimes it couldn't even tell the correct time. So why did people trust it? Because what happened next was far more revolutionary than anyone could have imagined. Imagine standing in the middle of an ancient Egyptian city more than 4,000 years ago. The desert air shimmers. The sun hangs above you like a giant spotlight. In the center of a courtyard, there's nothing more than a tall stone pillar. No gears, no hands, no ticking. And yet, people gather around it as if it knows something they don't, because in a way, it does. As the sun slowly moves across the sky, the pillar's shadow quietly crawls across the ground, almost too slowly to notice. But if you watched it for an entire day, you'd see something incredible. The shadow wasn't wandering randomly. It followed the same path, again and again and again. That's when humans realized something astonishing. The sky wasn't chaotic. It behaved like a machine. That simple observation gave birth to one of humanity's earliest timekeepers, the sundial. It sounds obvious today. Stick something upright, watch the shadow. Simple. Except it wasn't. Building a sundial that actually worked required something ancient people couldn't see. The Earth itself was moving, every single day, without anyone feeling it. To make a sundial accurate, its pointer had to be tilted toward Earth's axis. Many civilizations discovered this only after centuries of trial and error. Even then, there was another problem. The shadow moved differently depending on the season. Winter mornings looked nothing like summer mornings. The sun itself seemed to change its behavior throughout the year. So the very first clocks lied. Not intentionally. Nature was simply more complicated than anyone expected. But here's what nobody expected. People didn't stop trusting the sun. They started studying it even more carefully. Every mistake became another clue. Every strange shadow became another lesson. Time wasn't just something to read anymore. It had become something to investigate. Meanwhile, hundreds of kilometers away, another civilization faced a completely different problem. What happens after sunset? The moment darkness swallowed the land. The greatest clock on Earth disappeared. No shadow, no sunlight, no way to measure the passing hours. Imagine being a guard protecting a temple. You don't own a clock. Instead, every hour you glance toward the sky. A different cluster of stars is waiting for you. The universe itself has become your watch. But clouds could hide the stars. Storms could erase the sky. Nature was still in charge. Humans wanted something they could control. And that's when someone had an almost unbelievable idea. What if, instead of measuring sunlight, you measured water? At first, it sounded ridiculous. Water doesn't have numbers. It doesn't know time. Yet, when poured through a tiny opening, it dripped at an almost steady pace. Drop. After drop. After drop. Ancient engineers transformed that simple observation into one of history's greatest inventions, the water clock, known by historians as the clepsydra, a bowl, a tiny hole, flowing water. Nothing more. And somehow, it could measure time long after sunset. Judges used it to limit speeches in court. Priests used it during religious ceremonies. Astronomers used it while mapping the heavens. For the first time, time no longer depended entirely on the sky. It could exist indoors, underground, even in complete darkness. That was revolutionary. But here's the strange part. Water has its own personality. Cold water flows differently from warm water. A larger hole changes everything. As the container empties, pressure drops. The flow slows down. The clock slowly becomes less accurate. Again, humans discovered that measuring time was far harder than they imagined. Every solution created another problem, and every problem forced people to think more deeply. Centuries later, archaeologists uncovered ancient water clocks with carefully carved markings along their sides. Those markings weren't decorations, they were corrections. Evidence that people had noticed their clocks making mistakes and had tried to compensate for them. Think about that for a moment. Thousands of years before computers, before electricity, before mathematics was fully developed, people were already calibrating instruments, not because they loved precision, because civilization demanded it. Empires were growing larger, markets became busier, religious ceremonies had to begin together. Armies had to move together. The more humans cooperated, the more valuable accurate time became. Then something unexpected happened. The invention that was supposed to help humans organize life quietly began changing the way humans thought. Instead of asking, is the sun high enough? People slowly began asking, are we late? That tiny shift seems harmless, but it would eventually reshape work, education, religion, business, even the way your brain experiences every single day. Because the next invention didn't simply measure time better, it transformed time into something you could own, spend, waste, or run out of. And once that happened, human history would never move at nature's pace again.